What would you do if you woke up one morning and checked your bank account and found $2.26? Not as a temporary inconvenience, as the reality of your life at 24 years old, college degree in hand, no job, no savings, no plan, just $2.26 standing between you and complete financial collapse. That is exactly where Grant Sabatier found himself in 2010. And 5 years later, he had over $1 million saved and invested. He retired at 30 years old, and then he wrote a book explaining in precise detail exactly how he did it. That book is called Financial Freedom. It came out in 2019, and it is one of the most honest, most specific, and most actionable books ever written about building wealth quickly and retiring early. What makes this book different from most financial independence books is the speed. Grant did not take the slow and steady approach of saving 15% of his income for 40 years. He took an aggressive, intentional, every available option approach that compressed what most people do in 40 years into 5. In this video, I am going to walk you through every major idea in this book in complete detail. By the end, you will have a clear picture of exactly what Grant did and how you can apply the same thinking to your own financial life. Let us get started. The moment everything changed. Grant opens the book with the $2 story. And it is worth understanding in detail because it explains the urgency and the intensity of everything he did afterward. At 24, he was living with his parents after college. He had no real job prospects. He had been spending money carelessly for years with no thought for the future. And one afternoon, he checked his bank account and saw $2.26. He says that moment was a genuine wake-up call, not because $2 was catastrophic in itself, but because it forced him to confront the reality that he had been completely passive about his financial life. He had been spending without thinking, living without planning, assuming things would work out without doing anything to make them work out. In that moment, he made a decision. He was going to figure out how money actually worked, not how other people said it worked, not the conventional 40-year plan, how it actually worked mathematically, and then he was going to apply that math as aggressively as he possibly could. He spent the next several months reading every personal finance book he could find, studying investing, learning about taxes, understanding compound interest at a deep level, and building a plan that he believed could take him from $2 to financial independence in the shortest possible time. He got a job in digital marketing, then another, then started a side business, then another. He saved every dollar he possibly could. He invested every month without exception. He tracked his progress obsessively. And 5 years later, he crossed the $1 million mark, the 7 levels of financial freedom. One of the most useful frameworks in the entire book is what Grant calls the 7 levels of financial freedom. He says, most people think of financial freedom as a single destination. Either you have it or you do not. But he argues it is actually a spectrum with 7 distinct levels. And knowing which level you are on right now tells you exactly what your next step should be. Level 1 is clarity. This is the starting point. You know exactly where you stand financially. You know what you earn. You know what you spend. You know what you owe. And you know your net worth. Most people have never done this honest accounting of their financial life, and you cannot navigate toward a destination you cannot see clearly. Level 2 is self-sufficiency. You are earning enough to cover your own living expenses without relying on anyone else. You are not living paycheck to paycheck, but you are not building significant savings either. You are stable, but not progressing. Level 3 is breathing room. You have paid off your high-interest debt. You have a small emergency fund. You have a little surplus each month that you are beginning to save and invest. You have room to breathe. The financial stress has reduced, and you are starting to build momentum. Level 4 is stability. You have a fully funded emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses. You have no high-interest debt. You are saving and investing consistently every month. Your financial foundation is solid enough to withstand most unexpected events without crisis. Level 5 is flexibility. This is where it gets exciting. You have at least 2 years of living expenses saved and invested. You have options you did not have before. You could take a lower-paying job you love. You could take several months off to travel or pursue a project. You could handle a major life change without financial catastrophe. Flexibility means your money gives you real choices. Level 6 is financial independence. Your investment portfolio generates enough income through returns and dividends to cover your annual living expenses indefinitely. You no longer need to work to maintain your lifestyle. Work becomes completely optional. Level 7 is abundant wealth. Your investments generate significantly more than you need. You have resources to be extraordinarily generous, to fund projects that matter to you, to create a legacy, to live with complete financial freedom at the highest level. Grant says most people never get past level 2 or 3, not because they cannot, but because they have never clearly defined the levels or identified exactly where they are and what the next step requires. Knowing which level you are on right now is the beginning of the path to the next one. The real cost of money. One of the most powerful ideas in financial freedom is what Grant calls the real cost of money, and it is a concept that permanently changes how you evaluate every spending decision you make. He says most people think about money in face value. A $5 coffee costs $5, a $30,000 car costs $30,000, a $100 dinner costs $100. But this is not the real cost. The real cost of any money you spend is not the dollar amount. It is what that money would have grown into if you had invested it instead. Grant shows through specific calculations that a $5 daily coffee is not really a $5 decision. If you invested that $5 every day for 30 years at a reasonable investment return, it would grow to hundreds of thousands of dollars. The real cost of that daily coffee over 30 years is not the purchase price. It is the investment return you gave up. He calls this opportunity cost thinking, and he says applying it consistently to your spending decisions is one of the most powerful shifts you can make in your financial behavior. He is not saying never spend money on anything enjoyable. He is saying make those spending decisions consciously, with full awareness of what you are giving up. When you understand that every dollar you spend today costs you significantly more than a dollar in future wealth, you start spending much more deliberately. He also applies this thinking to time. He says your time is even more finite than your money, and every hour you spend working for someone else is an hour you are not spending building your own wealth and your own freedom. Understanding the real cost of your time in terms of financial independence changes how you think about your career, your side hustles, and every hour of your day. Maximize your income. Grant is emphatic about something that most financial independence books underemphasize. Saving is important, investing is essential, but increasing your income is the most powerful lever available to you, especially in the early years of your wealth building journey. He says there is a limit to how much you can cut your expenses. You can only reduce spending to zero, but there is no limit to how much you can increase your income, and every additional dollar you earn that goes directly into investment compounds into dramatically more over time. He dedicates significant portions of the book to income maximization strategies. The first strategy is salary negotiation. Grant says most people accept the salary they are offered without negotiating. And this single habit of not negotiating costs the average person hundreds of thousands of dollars over their career when you account for compound raises built on top of a higher base. He gives specific tactics for negotiating effectively. Research what similar roles pay at other companies before any negotiation. Always let the employer name a number first. When you counter, always go higher than your actual target because you will be negotiated down. Frame your value in terms of what you contribute rather than what you need. The second strategy is switching jobs strategically. Research consistently shows that people who stay at the same company for many years earn significantly less over time than people who move between companies every 2 to 3 years. The market rewards people who switch because companies compete for talent by offering above-market salaries to attract new hires. Loyal long-term employees typically receive below-market raises. The third strategy is building side income. Grant built multiple side hustles alongside his main job. He started websites, he did consulting, he found every legitimate way to generate additional income outside of his primary employment, and every dollar from those side hustles went directly into investment. He says the side hustle income is especially powerful early in your wealth building journey because it can be invested almost entirely. Your main job covers your living expenses, your side hustle income has no overhead. It all becomes fuel for your investment portfolio. I invest. Early and invest often. Grant is not an exotic investor. He does not trade individual stocks. He does not try to time the market. He does not pursue complicated strategies. He invests in low-cost index funds. He automates his contributions. He never sells during market downturns. And he talks about why this simple approach is not just adequate, but actually optimal for most individual investors. He revisits the mathematics of compound interest with a level of detail and urgency that makes it feel genuinely new, even if you have heard the concept before. He shows that the difference between starting to invest at 25 versus 35 is not just 10 years of contributions. It is potentially decades of compound growth on every dollar invested in those 10 years. The 25-year-old who invests $1,000 and leaves it alone for 40 years ends up with dramatically more than the 35-year-old who invests the same $1,000 and leaves it for 30 years. Not because of the difference in contributions, but because of the difference in compounding time. He also addresses the psychological challenge of investing. The stock market is volatile. It goes up and it goes down. And most people find it emotionally very difficult to watch their portfolio fall in value without doing something about it. Grant says the most important investment skill is not picking the right funds. It is staying in the market when everything feels like it is falling apart. Because the investors who sell during crashes and wait for recovery always miss the early days of the recovery, which are often the most explosive. And missing those days costs them a disproportionate share of their long-term returns. He recommends automating your investments so the contributions happen regardless of what the market is doing or how you feel about it. Automation removes the decision and therefore removes the emotional vulnerability. The savings rate obsession. Like most financial independence advocates, Grant is obsessed with savings rate, but he approaches it with more nuance than most. He says savings rate is the most important number in your entire financial life, more important than your income, more important than your investment returns, because savings rate directly determines two things simultaneously: how fast you accumulate wealth and how much wealth you need to accumulate to be financially independent. He shows the math clearly. Someone who saves 10% of their income needs to work for roughly 40 years before they can retire on their investments. Someone who saves 50% needs to work for about 17 years. Someone who saves 75% needs to work for about 7 years. The math is counterintuitive but precise. Higher savings rate means faster accumulation. And because you are also living on less, the amount you need to accumulate is lower. Both effects work together to dramatically reduce the time needed. Grant pushed his savings rate to over 50% during his 5-year sprint to financial independence. He did this by aggressively cutting expenses, living with roommates, cooking at home, eliminating all unnecessary spending, and channeling every dollar from his side hustles directly into investment. He is clear that 50% or higher is not the right target for everyone. The right savings rate depends on your timeline, your goals, and your personal definition of a good life. But he says almost everyone can save more than they currently do, and most people would be surprised by how little their quality of life actually suffers when they eliminate spending that was happening out of habit rather than genuine satisfaction. Lifestyle design. This is where financial freedom goes beyond most personal finance books. Grant does not just talk about building wealth, he talks about designing the life that the wealth is supposed to fund. He says one of the most common mistakes people make in pursuing financial independence is treating it as a purely financial goal. They optimize their portfolio, they hit their number, and then they discover they have no idea what they actually want to do with the freedom they have built. He says the financial plan and the life plan need to be developed together, not as separate projects, as one integrated vision. He asks readers to think carefully about what they are optimizing for, not the generic answer of freedom or happiness. The specific answer: what does your ideal Tuesday look like? Not your ideal vacation, not your ideal retirement, your ideal ordinary day. Where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing in the morning? What are you doing in the afternoon? What kind of work, if any, are you doing? What kind of experiences are you having? He says the more specifically you can answer these questions, the better you can align your financial decisions with what you are actually trying to build. Because a financial plan built around someone else's definition of freedom will not actually deliver freedom for you. He also talks about the concept of mini retirements. Rather than deferring all enjoyment until you reach your financial independence number, deliberately building periods of extended time off throughout your wealth building years. A month traveling, a summer pursuing a creative project, time spent investing in relationships and experiences while you are still young enough to fully enjoy them. He says life does not start when you hit your number. Life is happening right now, and a financial plan that asks you to defer all living until some future date is a plan that may cost you more than it gives you. The money dial. One of the most practical tools in the book is what Grant calls the money dial. Imagine a dial with 10 on one end and 0 on the other. Each point on the dial represents how much money you spend in a particular category of your life relative to the maximum you could spend. Most people have their dials set at a roughly uniform level across all categories. They spend a moderate amount on food, a moderate amount on housing, a moderate amount on entertainment, a moderate amount on everything. Grant says this approach is financially suboptimal and personally unsatisfying simultaneously. It means you are spreading your spending so evenly that no category of your life is particularly excellent. You are living at a mediocre level across the board. His approach is to identify the one or two categories that matter most to you, the things that genuinely make your life feel rich, and turn those dials up to 10. Spend lavishly on what you love. Then turn every other dial down as low as possible, not to 0 necessarily, but to the minimum that still meets your genuine needs rather than your habitual expectations. If travel is what makes you feel most alive, spend generously on travel. Then live in a modest apartment, drive an old car, and eat simply the rest of the time. If food and cooking is your great joy, build your life around exceptional meals. Then cut aggressively everywhere else. The total spending might be similar to what you spent before, but the satisfaction is dramatically higher because you are concentrating your resources on what actually matters to you rather than diluting them across everything equally. He says this is the key insight about conscious spending. It is not about spending less, it is about spending on the right things. The final thought. Financial Freedom is ultimately a book about urgency and possibility. The urgency comes from Grant's clear-eyed understanding of what waiting costs you. Every year you delay building wealth is not just a year of lost savings. It is a year of lost compounding on every dollar you could have had working for you. The math is unforgiving on this point. Time is the most valuable ingredient in the wealth equation, and it is the one ingredient that cannot be recovered once it is spent. The possibility comes from his own story. He started at 24 with $2.26. 5 years later, he had $1 million and his time back forever, not through luck, not through inheritance, not through a single dramatic breakthrough. Through a combination of aggressive saving, multiple income sources, consistent investing, and the willingness to optimize his entire life around a single clear goal. He says, the traditional financial plan, the 40-year slow accumulation toward a retirement and old age, is a choice, not a requirement, not the only option, just one path among many. And it is a path that asks you to spend the most energetic and capable decades of your life working for someone else in exchange for freedom at the end when your energy and health are diminished. The alternative is more demanding in the short term. It requires a higher savings rate, more income generation, more intentional living, and more delayed consumption than most people are comfortable with. But the payoff is not just financial. It is temporal. It is getting your time back while you are still young enough to use it for everything that matters most to you. The $2 moment was a gift in disguise, because it forced Grant to choose a different path, and that different path is available to anyone willing to make the same choice. Start today, calculate your number, maximize your income, increase your savings rate, automate your investments. Design the life you are building toward and move toward it every single day. Thank you for watching. If this video gave you a clearer and more urgent sense of what financial freedom looks like and how to build it fast, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more deep book summaries every week, and I will see you in the next video.